So I am joined by your brand new UFC heavyweight fighter, Michael Parkin. So to now be in the UFC, how does that feel, buddy?
Oh, it's crazy. Still surreal. Still hasn't sunk in, I don't think.
And as well, the support that you've received from everybody as well since this win, even beforehand, the support, there was lots of it, and to get the win as well, it's only continued from there. So to see how much support is actually behind you so far, just 6 fights into your pro career, what's that been like as well for you?
Oh, it's crazy. Like I said, I got home about 11:30 Thursday night, and there was like a party waiting for us, like 30, 40 people, all stopped up. They've been here since 8 o'clock waiting for us. Obviously, a few delays and that coming home. So it's crazy. Like I said, everybody stopped to watch me fight. That was like at 3:30 in the morning or something. All my friends, family stopped up for that. And then most of them were all around mine waiting for us to come back. So the support's amazing.
Yeah, and as well, just to touch on a little bit the fight, obviously making the jump from regional shows like Rise and Conquer, which are great platforms for pro and regional fighters alike, to then make the jump over to something like the UFC and the Contender Series. What was that sort of big jump onto those sort of shows like?
Yeah, it was a bit different because obviously there wasn't many fans out anyway. I have fought once in lockdown while there was no fans, so I've experienced it a little bit. But no, I've not really bothered about the shows. It was more like the quality of opponents that I've fought. I was struggling to get matchups and stuff like that. I think that's why I was an underdog, because they just looked at the records. We were both 5-0, but the people I'd fought maybe didn't have winning records like the people he fought. But it's hard to get matched up with heavyweight. So I was more happy to find like an opponent who was like me, 5-0. He was dangerous. He stopped like all of his opponents. So I was more excited for the step up in competition.
Yeah, and obviously you got that step up in competition, and it didn't seem to phase you one bit. We're getting the round one finish. But what is the sort of emotions going through your head after getting the finish and knowing that you are most likely then getting the UFC contracts as well right after the star win?
Well, the fight was perfect because I wasn't. Obviously, them occasions either people go crazy or they don't do anything because they're scared to lose. So I think my opponent going crazy actually helped us out because it like started the fight off really good and started, so I got a good finish. So obviously I got the finish, and then there's not many heavyweights anyway, so it was like I was expecting a contract unless it was like absolutely terrible, boring fight. So I remember winning the fight. Like it was a bit surreal. Obviously, you just won. Your mob wasn't about to win, and then my coach was jumping all over because he was like, "There's no way on earth you can't get a contract after that performance." It's like you definitely get the contract. And obviously, I was sitting waiting for him. You couldn't really hear that well in the show because people were like, "Oh, you look nervous. Like, what were you thinking about?" And I was thinking I couldn't really hear him. I didn't know what he was saying until he said, "Oh, you're in the UFC," and I heard that part. But other than that, I couldn't really hear dead well what he was saying.
Yeah, and you touched on there a little bit about the coaches. Obviously, he's training out at TFT. During most of your camps, you've had a lot of brilliant talents come in during those camps, whether been Tom Aspinall, Paul Craig, Abraham Babley, any of those sort of fighters. So to be able to be in a gym, get the right people in for you, and then also see the progression of the gym as well, what's that been like for you as a fighter?
Oh, it's been amazing. Like step up first going to TFT. Obviously, I'd probably never sparred with a heavyweight like Phil DeFries's caliber. So I think the first time I turned up, it was like obviously nervous going to a new gym. Everyone was dead, like hospital and inviting. And then Phil was like, "Oh, Saturday, you want to do a few MMA rounds with us?" And I was like, "Oh, I'll train with him a bit." I was like, "Yeah." And it was like the worst experience of my life. I got took down by him straight away. I think he held us in guard the full 5 minutes and just punched me in. And I remember thinking to myself, like, "Oh God, I'm terrible. There's not a thing I can do." But then obviously the weeks gone by, that's what I needed. Just need to get better, and you need to be getting knocked as well. So obviously I had a hard time with Phil all the time. He brought his own load, especially me grappling and everything, me wrestling. And then obviously the experience, like he's been around it all. Just speaking to him was great. And obviously he had Paul coming down all the time. And then like sort of snowballed from there. He was like, "Oh, you want to do a few rounds with Mick Paul?" He's like, "Decent." And I started sparring with Paul. And obviously Paul was like, "Oh, me and Phil would use us both for sparring and stuff like that." Obviously depending on his opponents. And then obviously Tom started like coming on the scene. And Phil was like, "Oh, I'm going to travel down, do a bit of sparring with him." And then so obviously my friend and Tom, obviously he's like lovely guy as well. So now I've got like Phil, Tom and Paul, I would say, are the main training partners for us. Obviously, like, for instance, Tom's injured at the moment. I can't train with him, so I've got Phil and Paul. And then if I'm injured, Phil's got Paul, or he's got Tom. So I think we've got a good selection of heavyweights now. We're out and train. We're not too far away. I know we're like sort of in the middle between them both. I think Paul's like 2.5, 3 hours to us, and Tom's the same. But obviously, you don't mind travelling 3 hours to get the caliber you're getting.
100%. And you mentioned there with the names, obviously, you've got Paul, who's UFC, brilliant jiu-jitsu. Phil, who's KSW champion, he fights not too far away now, and Tom Aspinall as well. So to be in and around those people for either the first time or just the first few times, what is that like, seeing those people? Obviously, two of them well-established UFC fighters, the other another well-established professional fighter as well.
I remember the first time, so obviously probably the first person apart from Phil was probably Paul. So he come to the gym to do rounds. I jumped in. He was fighting. I can't remember who he was fighting. And I did a 5-minute round with him. And when you first get in, you're looking across and you're like, obviously seeing him on telly on the UFC. So it's a bit like nervous at first. It is definitely nervous. You're like, oh God, he's going to be so strong, so fit, so good, which he is. But then after a while, you start sparring with these great people. You realise they're just people like you. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, they are amazing, but like, there's nothing different to do when they're training and getting better every day. Like, they make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. So it's definitely good for experience. Then once you get like used to that sort of feeling, it doesn't bother us now. Do you know what I mean? But at first, definitely in your head, you're like, oh God, he's in the UFC. He's going to be absolutely killing us. And then like the more you spar with people, the more that you realise like what you're good at and stuff. And like, oh, you must be okay because like these guys are using you for sparring. And so I kept thinking to myself, I must be half decent because like good people are using us. And then like the better you do, you might win the odd round here and there against them. It's like, oh, I'm doing something right. I'm just getting better.
Yeah, and then also being around those people, obviously, that they are in the UFC. So when you first got your Dana White Contender Series call up, knowing that were coming, did you sort of ask them what it was like, their experiences in the UFC? Obviously, your coaches as well, very experienced, and a lot of the gym are all competitors as well. So were you sort of picking at them a little bit, just seeing sort of atmosphere going into the UFC, or was it one of those ones that you were just ready for?
I just felt ready for it. I wasn't like... Obviously, I'm buzzing, you know what I mean? Like, a fight for it was a mint opportunity. I didn't get like too overwhelmed, I don't think. Like, even the week of the fight, I wasn't dead nervous and stuff like that. I was always thinking about like, forget about the show. Like, if like I've still got to win. Everybody was like, oh, it's a mint opportunity. It's like life changing, which it is. But I didn't think about that. I was more thinking about a better opponent. Like, and he's dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, he could definitely come in there and knock me out. So I couldn't look past anybody. So I just thought about, rather than the big show, I just thought about the opponent. We did a massive game plan for him. He fought his last 2 fights southpaw, so I did loads of training against the southpaw. And then he fought orthodox. But obviously, I fought orthodox before, so I quickly made the change in there. But no, it was good, obviously, getting like high-level opponents. I just did my full camp working on him. Well, usually I'm just trying to get better myself and work on my game, which I do all the time anyway, but I could like... practice a game plan, and like Fisher wrote us a game plan, stuff I was going to do. I had like certain shapes I was showing in the fight, and then obviously that went out the window when he was orthodox and he just started swinging. So it was a bit it was experience for me, do you know what I mean? Like being under pressure, like how I handled the pressure. I think I did well. Even when he was hitting some big shots, I didn't look too out of place. I wobbled him, maybe went a bit too crazy for like 10 seconds swinging. Just always dangerous at heavyweight. And then obviously composed myself and got the finish.
Yeah, and you mentioned a little bit before about in terms of getting the matchups when you were on the regional scene as well. And the UK pro pool, it's not as heavy with heavyweights in the division in terms of the vast competition. So when you were able to know that you now are able to get those sort of matchups that you wanted, do you start thinking about who you're wanting next, or is it just a case of now you're ready to take on anybody that you have to fight?
Just see who offered. Do you know what I mean? I'm happy for anything. Do you know what I mean? More excited just to get my first UFC fight out of the way. I don't know how early it'll be. Probably realistically looking to probably end of the year, early next year. Realistically, I think. So I was like a few little knocks on my fights, so I rest up. I've had a week off training. I go away Sunday for a week, so I'll have 2 weeks rest, and that'll be me. I'll be back in the gym training, and then look for like whatever dates they want us to get us on. Few people mentioned that English card, and obviously a few people have said, "Oh, it'll be December, it'll be January," but obviously that would be amazing to get on. But I'm not too fussed, you know what I mean? I think any card would be amazing to get on, like your first UFC fight, so anything will do.
Yeah, and then just finally, for those that might not know the name of Mick Parkin now that you are inside of the UFC, What is it that people can expect to see from you now that you are inside of the UFC?
I always think I'm a little bit more technical than some of these heavyweights out there. A lot of them are just big bangers. I don't think I'm one of these one-shot people. I'm more technical. I think I break people down and set little traps. But I used to say I was always a striker, but now I'm off to tell people I can grapple as well.
100%. And then finally, just any sponsors, your social medias, teammates, coaches, etc., that you want to shout out. Obviously, just feel free to go ahead, buddy.
Oh, shout out's good. I'd have too many. And obviously got to mention TFT. That's my main training place. If anybody wants to get involved, just start training, or fighters want to get there, it's killing at the moment. And you'll see why when you see Fisher's classes how technical they are. So yeah, but even beginners, people are going to be a bit nervous to start gyms, but definitely come along. Everyone's super friendly, and like you'll see like some really high level people there, and like beginners as well, all mixing.
100%. Well, that is everything from me. I do appreciate your time. Obviously, that was a UFC heavyweight, Michael Parkin. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, buddy.
Cheers, mate.
Fucking my lights about, but cheers for that, buddy.
No worries. Thank you, mate.